Before Romeo and Juliet, before Lance and Gwen, before Rick and Ilsa, before Tony and Maria, before Leia and Han, before Roger and Jessica, before Lady and Tramp, Tristan and Isolde. This is one of the oldest love stories ever written. It's an epic tale of doomed love. The daughter of Ireland's King Donnchadth falls into a forbidden love with the son of Cornwall's Lord Marke. The passion and love of Romeo and Juliet combined with the war and the action thrillers of Gladiator. You know what happened to the lion in the arena after he killed the girl? He was Gladiator. I never gets old. February, the month of love. And so we continue the first romance of Tristan and Isolde, an epic tale of doomed love. Anyway, on to the story. In part the first, Tristan and Isolde came to love one another completely, and as fully as lovers ever loved. On account of this love, the lovers were driven from king and country and would be pursued unto death if they were found. And so, not wanting to die, they took refuge in each other's arms in the wild wood, the wood of Moray. Whatever dies was not mixed equally. If our two loves be one, or thou and I love so alike, that none do slacken, none can die. I have an extra shoe. Lucky me. Part the second, the wood of Moray. They, that'd be Tristan and Isolde. Where's Isolde and Tristan? Shut up, it's a long story. Get on with it. Yes. Okay, here we go. They wandered in the depths of the wild wood, restless and in haste like beasts that are hunted, nor do they often dare to return by night to the shelter of yesterday. They eat but the flesh of wild animals. Their faces sank and grew white, their clothes ragged, for the briars tore them. They loved each other, and they did not know that they suffered, though. One day, as they were wandering in these high woods that had never yet been felled or ordered, they came upon the hermitage of Ogren. The old man limped in the sunlight under a light growth of maples near his chapel. He leaned upon his crutch and cried out, "Lord Tristan, hear the oath which the Cornish men have sworn against you. The king has published a ban in every parish, Lord Tristan, that whosoever may seize you shall receive 100 marks of gold for his guerdon, and all the barons have sworn to give you up alive or dead. Do penance, Lord Tristan. God pardons the sinner who turns to repentance." "And of what should I repent, Ogren, my lord, or of what crime? You that sit in judgment upon us here, do you know what cup it was we drank upon the high seas? That good great draught inebriates us both. I would rather beg my life long and live of roots and herbs with Isolde than lacking her be king of a wide kingdom. God aid you, Lord Tristan, for you have lost both this world and the next. A man that is traitor to his lord is worthy to be torn by horses and burnt upon the faggot, and wherever his ashes fall, no grass shall grow, and all tillage is waste, and the trees and the green things die. Lord Tristan, give back Queen Isolde to the man who espoused her lawfully and according to the laws of Rome." "He gave her to his lepers. From these lepers I myself rescued her with my own hand, and henceforth she is mine altogether. She cannot pass from me, nor I from her." At this Ogren sat down, but at his feet Isolde wept silently, and also refused penance. "Ah me then," said Ogren, "what comfort can one give the dead? Do penance for you both then, Tristan. For a man who lives in sin without repenting is a man quite dead." "Oh, no," said Tristan. "I live, and I do no penance, Ogren. We will go back into the high wood, which comforts and wards us all round about. Come with me, Isolde, my friend." Isolde rose up. They held each other's hands. In the gathering together a few necessities, Tristan and Isolde retreated into the woods, where they found refuge in a cave with shining crystal structures larger than a man. A cave that had been cut into a mountain, and a place of refuge and love-making in heathen times. This cave became the temple of love. Its altar was a bed also made of crystal. Tristan and Isolde lived together in this crystal cave for many days, sustaining themselves, some say from hunting, but others say from love alone. Look at this right here in Second Life. We're in a crystal cave. So does anybody want the script to read along with? Let me. Bye-bye. The summer passed and the winter came. The two lovers lived, all hidden in the hollow of the rock, and on the frozen earth the cold crisped their couch with dead leaves. And the strength of their love neither one nor the other felt these mortal things. The lovers had ceased to wander through the forest, for none of the cowardly barons ran the risk of their pursuit, knowing well that Tristan would have hanged them to the branches of a tree had he found them there. And then Tristan was glad. And henceforward from that day no one dared enter the wild wood, for terror guarded it, and the lovers were lords of it all. And then it was that Tristan fashioned his bow, fail not, which struck home always, man or beast, whatever it aimed at. Now, my lords, upon a summer day, I stand corrected, my lords and ladies, upon a summer day, when mowing is, a little after Whitsuntide, as the birds sang dawn, Tristan left his hut and girt his sword on him, and took his bow, fail not, and went off into the woods. But before evening, great evil was to fall upon Tristan, for no lovers ever loved so much or paid their love so dear. When Tristan came back, broken by the heat, the queen said, "Friend, where have you been?" "I've been hunting a hart, friend. That wearied me. I would lie down and sleep." A hart isn't a deer, of course, not a heart is in a heart, because, well, anyway. Now, it was the lovers' custom by night to sleep bare and in each other's embrace, as lovers do. But in daylight, prudence guided Tristan's thoughts, and fearing a chance discovery, Tristan drew his sword, then placed the naked blade between himself and Isolde, as they slumbered fully clothed and apart on their crystal bed in the crystal cave. And well this prudence was rewarded, for on this day their solitude was interrupted by a hunting party led by King Marke himself. Just as Tristan had supposed one day may happen, one of the huntsmen discovered the cave and peeped in through an opening. His name was Tom, which is why they called him Peeping Tom. Observing the two lying asleep on their bed, separated by the naked sword, the huntsman ran to King Marke and reported what he had seen. "Mr. Lorry, a pleasure to see you, sir." Guided by the huntsman, Marke entered alone into the cave, his sword drawn, and watched them as they lay there. But he saw that Tristan and Isolde were apart and fully clothed, and he wondered because between them was the naked blade upon the bed. Then Marke said to himself, "My God, I may not kill them. For all the time they have lived together in this wood, these two lovers, yet is the sword here between them, and throughout Christendom men know that sign. Therefore I will not slay these two, for that would be treason and wrong. But I will make it so that when they wake, they may know that I found them here asleep and spared them, and that God had pity on them both." It chanced that a sunbeam fell upon the white face of the sleeping Isolde, and the king took his ermined gloves and put them against the crevice whence it shone, and he departed. And then in her sleep a vision came to Isolde. She seemed to be in a great wood, and two lions near her fought for her. And she gave a cry and woke, and the gloves fell upon her breast. And at the cry Tristan woke, and made to seize his sword, and saw by the golden hilt that it was not his, but the king's sword. And the queen saw the king's ermine gloves lying on her breast, and she cried out, "Oh, dear Tristan, the king has found us here." And Tristan cried out, "He has taken my sword. He was alone, but he will return, and he will burn us before the people. Let us fly." And so by great marches, with Cornwall alone, they fled toward Wales. Ogren the Hermit. After 3 days it happened that Tristan, in following a wounded deer, fared out into the wood. Now, why would it be a wounded deer? If fail not is so good, why would the deer just be wounded? You know what I'm saying? Anyway. And Tristan was caught by nightfall, and took to thinking thus under the dark wood alone. "It was not fear that moved my king. He had my sword, and I slept. Had he wished to slay me, why did he leave me his own blade? Oh, Lord Marke, my father, I know you now. There was pardon in your heart, and tenderness, and pity for us. Yet how was that? For who could forgive in this matter without shame? It was not pardon, it was understanding. faggot and the chantry leap and the leper ambush have shown him God upon our side. Also, I think he remembered the boy, me, who long ago harped at his feet, and my land of Lyonesse, which I left for him, and the Moorholt spear and blood shed in his honour. He remembered how I made no avowal, but acclaimed a trial at arms, and the high nature of his heart has made him understand what men around him cannot. Yes, never can he know of the spell, yet he doubts and hopes and knows I have told no lie, and would have me prove my cause. Oh, but to win at arms by God's aid for him, and enter his peace, and to put on mail for my Lord Marke again. But then Lord Marke must take her back, and I must yield her. Oh, it would have been much better had he killed me in my sleep. For till now I was hunted, and I could hate, and I could forget. He had thrown Isolde to the lepers. She was no more his, but mine. And now by his compassion he has wakened my heart and regained the queen. For the queen, she was at his side. But in this wood she lives a slave, and I waste her youth for rooms all hung with silk. She has this savage place and thorn bushes for her splendid walls, and I am the cause that she treads this ugly road now. So now I cry to God, the Lord, who is King of the world. I beg him to give me strength to yield back Isolde to King Marke, for she is indeed his wife, wed according to the laws of Rome and before all the barony of the land. And as Tristan thought thus, he leant upon his bow, and all through the night considered his sorrow. Within the hollow of thorns there was a resting place. Isolde the fair awaited Tristan's return. The golden ring that King Marke had slipped there glistened on her finger in the moonlight, and she thought, He that put that ring is not the man who threw me to his lepers in his wrath. He is rather a compassionate lord, who from the day I touched his shore received me and protected me, and he loved Tristan once, but I came. See what I have done to them. He should have been lived in the king's palace, Tristan. Tristan should have ridden through the king's and barons' fees, finding adventure, but through me, Tristan has forgotten his knighthood and is hunted and exiled from the court, leading a random life. Just then she heard the feet of Tristan coming over the dead leaves and twigs. She came to meet him, as was her wont, to relieve him of his arms, and she took from him his bow, Fail Not, who sometimes only wounds animals instead of actually killing them, and his arrows, and she unbuckled his sword straps. And, Friend, said she, it is the king's sword. I should have slain me, but it spared us. Isolde took the sword, kissed the hilt of gold, and Tristan saw her weeping. Friend, said he, if I could make peace with the king, if he would allow me to sustain in arms, and neither by act nor word have I loved you with a wrongful love, any knight from the marshes of Ely right down to Durham would be gainsay me. He would find me armed in the ring. Then if the king would keep you and drive me out, I would cross to the lowlands or to Brittany with Cornwall alone. But wherever I went, and always my queen Isolde, I should be yours. Nor would I have spoken thus, Isolde, but for the wretchedness you bear so long for my sake in this desert land. Oh, my friend Tristan, there is the hermit Ogren. Let us return to him and cry mercy to the King of Heaven. And so the two wakened Cornwall. Isolde mounted the steed, and Tristan led it by the bridle, and all night long they went for the last time through the woods of their love, and they did not speak a word. By morning they came to the hermitage, where Ogren read at the threshold, and seeing them, called them tenderly. Friends, see how love drives you still to further wretchedness. Will you not yet do penance at last for your madness? Lord Ogren, said Tristan, hear us. Help us to offer peace to the king, and I will yield him the queen, and I myself will go far away into Brittany or the lowlands, and if some day the king suffer me, I'll return and serve as I should. At the hermit's feet, Isolde said in her turn, Yes, love is madness, nor will I live longer so, for though I will not say one word of penance for my love, which is there remains forever, yet from now on I will be separate from him. Then the hermit wept and praised God, and cried, High King, I praise thy name, for that thou hast let me live so long to give aid to these. And he gave them wise counsel, and took ink, and he wrote a little writ offering the king what Tristan said. Now that night Tristan took the road. Once more he saw the marble well and the tall pine tree, and he came beneath the window where the king slept, and called him gently, and Marke awoke and whispered, Who are you that call me in the night at such an hour? Lord, I am Tristan. I bring you a writ, and I lay it here. Then the king cried out, Nephew, for God's sake, wait a while. But Tristan had fled and joined his squire, mounted rapidly. Cornwall said to him, O Tristan, you are mad to have come here. Fly hard with me by the nearest road. And so they came back to the hermitage. There they found Ogren at prayer, but Isolde weeping silently. The Ford. No, not the Chevy, not the Dodge, the Ford. Marke had awakened his chaplain, and had given him the writ to read. The chaplain broke the seal, saluted in Tristan's name, and then, when he had cunningly made out the written words, told him what Tristan offered. And Marke heard without saying a word, but his heart was glad, for he still loved the queen. He summoned by name the choicest of his baronage, and when they were all assembled, they were silent, and the king spoke. My lords, here's a writ just sent me. I am your king, you are my lieges. Hear what is offered me, and then counsel me, for you owe me counsel. The chaplain rose, unfolded the writ, and upstanding. My lords, it is Tristan that sends love and homage to the king and all of his barony, and he adds, O king, when I slew the dragon and I conquered the king of Ireland's daughter, it was to me they gave her. I was to ward her at will, and yet I yielded her to you. And yet hardly had you wed, when felons made you accept their lives, and in your anger, fair uncle, my lord, you would have had us burnt without trial. But God took compassion on us, we prayed him, and he saved the queen, as justice was, and me also, though I leapt from a high rock, I was saved by the power of God. And since then, what have I done blameworthy? The queen was thrown to your lepers. I came to her succor, and I bore her away. Could I have done less for a woman who all but died innocent through me? I fled through the woods, nor could I have come down into the vale and yielded her, for there was a band to take us dead or alive, as you well know. But now, as then, I am ready, my lord, to sustain in arms against all comers that never have the queen for me, nor I for her, a love dishonourable to you. Publish the lists, and if I cannot prove my right in arms, you may burn me before your men. But if I conquer, you take back Isolde. No baron of yours will serve you as well as I. And if you will not have me, I will offer myself to the king of Galloway, or to him of the Lowlands, and you will hear of me never again. Take counsel, king, for if you will make no terms, I will take back Isolde to Ireland, and she shall be queen in her own land. And when the barons of Cornwall heard how Tristan offered battle, they said to the king, Sire, take back the queen. They were madmen that belied her to you. But as for Tristan, this fellow, let him go and ward in Galloway or in the Lowlands. Bid him bring back Isolde on such a day, and that soon. Then the king called thrice clearly, Will any man rise in accusation against Tristan? Will any man here rise in accusation against Tristan? Will any noble man here rise in accusation against Tristan? Now, as none replied, he said to his chaplain, Write me a writ in haste. You have heard what you shall write. Isolde has suffered enough in her youth, and let the writ be hung upon the arm of the red cross before evening. Write speedily. Now, towards midnight, Tristan crossed the heath of sand and found the writ, bore its seal to Ogren, and the hermit read the letter. How Marke consented by the council of his barons to take Isolde, but not to keep Tristan for his liege. Rather let him cross the sea, when on the third day hence at the ford of Chances he had given back the queen into King Mark's hands. Then Tristan said to the queen, Oh my God, I must lose you, my friend. But it must be, since I can thus spare you what you suffer for my sake. But when we part forever, I will give you a pledge of mine to keep it. From whatever unknown land I reach, I will send you some messenger, and he will bring back word of you, and at your call I will come from far away. Oh, Isolde sighed. Tristan, leave me your little dog, Toothold, and every time I see him I'll remember you and will be less sad. And friend, I have here a ring of green jasper. Take it for the love of me and put it on your finger. Then if anyone come saying he is from you, I will not trust him at all until he shows me this ring. But once I have seen it, there's no power or royal band that can prevent me from doing what you bid, wisdom or folly. Friend, said Tristan, Here I give you Toothold." Oh, he gave her his dog. "Friend," she replied, "take you this ring in reward." And they kissed each other upon the lips. Now Ogren, having left the lovers in the hermitage, hobbled up upon his crutch to the place called the Mount, and he bought ermine there, and fur, and cloth of silk, and purple, and scarlet, and a palfrey harnessed in gold that went softly, and the folk laughed to see him spending upon these the small moneys he had amassed so long. But the old man put the rich stuffs upon the palfrey, and came back to Isolde. "And, Queen," said he, "take these gifts of mine, that you may seem the finer on the day when you come to the ford." Meanwhile, there's the ford again. Meanwhile, the king had cried through all Cornwall the news that on the third day he would make peace with his queen at the ford. And the knights and the ladies came in a crowd to the gathering, for all loved the queen and would see her and save the 3 felons that yet survived. On the day chosen for the meeting, the field shone far with the rich tents of the barons, and suddenly Tristan and Isolde came at the forest's edge, and caught sight of King Mark far off in his barony. "Friend," said Tristan, "there is the king, your lord. His knights and his men, they are coming towards us, and very soon we may not speak to each other again. By the God of power, I conjure you, if ever I send you word, do you my bidding." "Friend," said Isolde, "on the day that I see the ring, nor the tower, nor wall, nor stronghold will let me from doing the will of my friend." "Why then," said Tristan, "Isolde, may God reward you." Their horses went abreast, and he drew hers towards him with his arm. "Friend," said Isolde, "hear my last prayer. You will leave this land, but wait some days. Hide till you know how the king may treat me, whether in wrath or in kindness, for I am afraid. Friend, Ori the woodman will entertain you hidden. Go you by night to the abandoned cellar that you know, and I will send Pyramus there to say if anyone misuse me." "Friend, none would dare. I will stay hidden with Ori. If any misuse you, let him fear me as the enemy himself." Now the 2 troops were near, and they saluted, and the king rode a bowshot before his men, and with him Dinas of Lytton. And when the barons had come up, Tristan, holding the Isolde's palfrey by the bridle, bowed to the king and said, "King, I yield you here Isolde the fair, and I summon you before the men of your land, that I may defend myself in your court, for I have had no judgment. Let me have trial at arms, and if I am conquered, burn me. Though I'd prefer you burn your men first. But if I conquer, keep me by you, or if you will not, it will be off by some far country." And yet no one, none of the 3 felons, none of the lords, dare I say cowardly lords, took up Tristan's wager. And the king, taking Isolde's palfrey by the bridle, gave it to Dinas and went apart to take counsel. Now Dinas in his joy gave all honor and courtesy to the queen, and when the felons saw her so fair and honored as of old, yes, that's the cowards themselves, they were stirred and rode to the king and said, "King, hear our counsel. That the queen was slandered we admit, but if she and Tristan re-enter your court together, the rumor will revive again. Rather let Tristan go apart a while. Doubtless some day you may recall him." And so Mark did, and ordered Tristan by his barons to go off without delay. And then Tristan came near the queen for his farewell, and as they looked at one another, the queen, in shame of that assembly, blushed. But the king pitied her, and spoke his nephew thus for the first time. "Nephew, you cannot leave in these rags. Take then from my treasury gold and silver, and white fur and grey, as much as you will." "King," said Tristan, "neither penny nor link of mail will I take. I will go as I came, and serve a high heart and mighty king in the lowlands." And Tristan turned rein and went down towards the sea. But Isolde followed him with her eyes, and so long as could yet be seen a long way off, she did not turn. Now at the news of the peace, men, women, and children, great and small, ran out of the town in a crowd to meet Isolde, and while they mourned Tristan's exile, they rejoiced at the queen's return. And to the noise of bells and over pavings strewn with branches, the king and his counts and princes made her escort, and the gates of the palace were thrown open that rich and poor might enter and eat and drink at will. And Mark freed 100 of his slaves, and armed a score of squires that day with hauberk and sword. But Tristan that night hid with Ori, as the queen had counselled him. The ordeal by iron. Denelin, Andret, and Gondoin held themselves safe. Tristan was far over the sea now, far away in the service of a distant king, and they beyond his power. The cowardly scoundrel villains. Therefore, during a hunt, one day, as the king rode apart in a glade where the pack would pass, and hearkening to the hounds, they all three rode towards him and said, "O king, we have somewhat to say. Once you condemned your queen without judgment, and that was wrong. Now you acquit her without judgment, that is wrong. She is not quit by trial, and the barons of your land blame you both. Counsel her then, king, to claim the ordeal in God's judgment, for since she is innocent, is she not? She may swear on the relics of the saints, and hot iron will not hurt her. For so custom runs, and in this easy way our doubts would be dissolved." But Mark finally grew a backbone and answered, "God strike you, my Cornish lords, how you hunt my shame. For you I have exiled my nephew, my beloved nephew, and now what would you now? Would you have me drive the queen to Ireland too? What novel plaints have you to plead? Did Tristan not offer you battle in this manner? He offered to battle to clear the queen forever. He offered, you heard him all. Where then were your lances and your shields?" "Sire, we have counselled you loyal counsel as lieges to your honour. Henceforward we hold our peace. Put aside your anger, give us your safeguard." But Mark stood up in the stirrup and cried out, "Out of my land, out of my peace, all of you! Tristan I exiled for you, and now go you in turn out of my land." But they answered, "Sire, it is well. Our keeps are strong and fenced, and we stand on rocks not easy for men to climb." And they all three rode off without salutation. But the king, not tarrying for huntsman or for hound, but straightway spurred his horse to Tintagel, and as he sprang up the stairs, the queen heard the jangle of his spurs upon the stones. She rose to meet him, and took his sword as she was wont, and she bowed before him, and was also her wont to do. But Mark raised her, holding her hands, and when Isolde looked up, she saw his noble face, and just that wrath that she had seen before the faggot fire. She thought that Tristan was found, and her heart grew cold, and without word she fell at the king's feet. He took her in his arms, and kissed her gently till she could speak again, and then he said, Friend, what evil tries you?" "Sire, I am afraid, for I have seen your anger." "Yes, I was angered at the hunt." "My lord, should one take so deeply the mischances of a game?" Mark smiled and said, "No, friend, no chance of hunting vexed me, but those 3 felons whom you know, and I have driven them forth from my land." "Sire, what did they say, or dare to say, of me?" "What matter? I've driven them forth." "Sire, all living have this right to say the word they have conceived, and I would ask a question, but from whom shall I learn save you? I am alone in a foreign land, sire, and I have no one else to defend me." They would have it that you should quit yourself by solemn oath and by the ordeal of iron, saying that God was true judge, and that as the queen was innocent, she herself should seek such judgment as to clear her forever. This was their clamour and their demand incessantly. But let us leave it. I tell you, I have driven them forth. Isolde trembled, but looking straight at her king, she said, "No, sire, call them back. I will clear myself by oath, but I bargain this, that on the appointed day you call King Arthur and Lord Gawain, Gerfric Kay, the Seneschal, and 100 of his knights to ride to the sandy heath, where your land marches with his, and a river flows between. For I will not swear before your barons alone, lest they should demand some new thing, and lest there should be no end to my trials. But if my warrantors, King Arthur, and his knights be there, the barons will not dare dispute the judgment." But as the heralds rode to Cardul, Isolde sent to Tristan secretly her squire Pyramus, and he ran through the underwood, avoiding paths, till he found the hut of Ori the woodsman, where Tristan for many days had awaited news. Pyramus told Tristan all, the ordeal, the place, the time, and he added, "My lord, the queen would have you on that day and place some, and come dressed as a pilgrim, so that none may know you, unarmed, so that none may challenge, to the sandy heath. She must cross the river to the place appointed. Beyond it, where Arthur and his 100 knights will stand, be you also, for my lady fears the judgment, but she trusts in God. Then Tristan answered, Go back, friend Pyramus. Return you to the queen, and say that I will do her bidding, always. Now you must know that Pyramus went back to Tintagel. He caught a sight of that same woodman who had betrayed the lovers before, the one named Thomas, who had peeked in on the cave. And he found him and had just dug a pitfall for wolves and wild boars and covered with leafy branches to hide it. And Pyramus came near the woodman and fled. But Pyramus drove him and caught him and broke his staff and his head together and pushed his body into the pitfall with his feet. Oh, so much for Thomas the Peeper. On the appointed day, King Marke and Isolde and the barons of Cornwall stood by the river. And the knights of Arthur and all their host were arrayed beyond. And just before them, sitting on the shore, was a poor pilgrim, wrapped in a cloak and hood, who held his wooden platter and begged alms. Alms for the poor! Alms for the poor! Monty Python reference there. Anyway, now as the Cornish boats came to the shoal of the further bank, Isolde said to the knights, My lords, how shall I land without befouling my clothes in the river mud? Oh, fetch me a ferryman. Now one of the knights hailed the pilgrim there and said, Friend, trust your coat and try the water. Carry you the queen to the shore, unless you fear the burden. The queen spoke to that pilgrim. My goodness, man, you are very large. Turn your face that way and your back this. I shall mount you like a boy. And then the pilgrim smiled at that request, and he turned his back, and she mounted, and they were all watching kings and counts. And Tristan held her thighs over his crutch, raised one foot, and limped with the other, and often seemed about to fall. And Tristan made a great show of suffering. The fair Isolde rode him, one leg on each side of him, and she whispered low to him, Friend, stumble you upon the sand. And as that fair pilgrim, Tristan, touched the shore, he stumbled, holding the queen in his arms, and the squires and the boatmen with their oars and boat-hooks drove the poor pilgrim away. But the queen said, Oh, let him be. Some great travail and journey has weakened him. And she threw to the pilgrim a little clasp of gold. Now before the tent of King Arthur was spread a rich Nicean cloth upon the grass, and the holy relics were set out on it, taken out of their covers and their shrines. And round the holy relics on the sward stood a guard more than the king's guard, for Lord Gawain, Gurflet, and Kay the Seneschal kept ward over them. The queen, having prayed God, took off the jewels from her neck and hands, and gave them to the beggars all round about. And she took off her purple mantle, and her overdress, and her shoes, with their precious stones. She gave them also to the poor that loved her, and no wonder they loved her. She kept upon her only the sleeveless tunic, and then with arms and feet quite bare. Isolde came between the two kings, and all round the barons watched her in silence, and some wept, for near the holy relics was a brazier burning. That's a brazier, not a brazier. And trembling a little, Isolde stretched out her right hand toward the bones and said, Kings of Logres and Cornwall, my lords Gawain and Kay and Gurflet, and all of you that are my warranters, by these holy things and all the holy things of earth, I swear now to you that no man has ever come between my thighs, except for that pilgrim who carried me on his back across the ford, and my own husband, King Marke. Will that oath stand? Yes, Queen, he said, and God see to it. Amen, said Isolde. Then she went near the brazier, pale and stumbling, and all were silent. The iron was red, but she thrust her bare arms among the coals and seized it, and bearing it took 9 steps. And then as she cast it from her, she stretched her arms out in a cross, with the palms of her hands wide open. All the men saw them fresh and clean and cold. Seeing that great sight, the kings and the barons and the people stood for a moment silent. Then they stirred together, and they praised God loudly all around. End of part the second, beginning of part the third. The Little Fairy Bell. When Tristan had come back to Ori's hut and had loosened his heavy pilgrim's cape, he saw clearly in his heart that it was time to keep his oath to King Marke and fly to the land. 3 days yet Tristan tarried, because he could not drag himself away from that earth, but on the 4th day he thanked the woodman and said to Cornwall, Master, my hour has come. And he went into Wales, into the land of the great Duke Gillian, who was young, powerful, and frank in spirit, and welcomed him nobly as a God-sent guest. As he did everything to him, honor and joy, but he found that neither adventure nor feast could soothe what Tristan suffered. And one day, as he sat by the young Duke's side, his spirit weighed upon him, so that, not knowing it, he groaned, and the Duke, to soothe him, ordered him into his private room a fairy thing, which pleased his eyes, and when he was sad, relieved his own heart. It was a little dog, and the varlets brought it to him, and they put it upon a table there. Now this little dog was a fairy dog, and it came from the Duke of Avalon, for a fairy had given it to him as a love gift, and no one can well describe its kind or beauty. And it bore at its neck, hung to a little chain of gold, a little bell that tinkled so gaily and so clear and so soft that as Tristan heard it, he was soothed, and his anguish melted away, and he forgot all that he had suffered for the queen. For such was the virtue of the bell, and such its property, that whosoever heard it, he lost all pain. And as Tristan stroked the little fairy thing, so the little dog that took away his sorrow, he saw how delicate it was and fine, and how it had soft hair like samite, and he thought how good a gift it would make for his queen. But he dared not ask for it right out, since he knew that the Duke loved this little dog beyond everything in the world, would yield it to no praise, nor to wealth, nor to wile. So one day Tristan, having made a plan in his mind, said this: Lord, what would you give to the man who could rid your land of the hairy giant Urgon that levies such a toll? Ha! Truly, Tristan, the victor might choose what he would, but none would dare do that. And then said Tristan, Those are strange words, for good comes to no Lancelot by risk and daring, and not for all the gold of Milan would I renounce my desire to find him in his woods and bring him down. And then Tristan went out to find Urgon in his lair, and they fought hard and long till courage conquered strength, and Tristan, having cut off the giant's head, bore it back to the Duke. Sire, said Tristan, since I may choose a reward according to your word, give me the little fairy dog. It was for that I conquered Urgon the giant, the hairy beast, and your promise stands. Friend, said Duke, take it then, but in taking it you take away also all my joy. Notwithstanding, Tristan took the little fairy dog, and he gave it in ward to a Welsh harper, who was cunning, and bore it to Cornwall till he came to Tintagel, and having come there, put it secretly into Brangien's hands. And the queen was so pleased that she gave 10 marks of gold to the harper, but she put it about that the Queen of Ireland, her mother, had sent the beast. And she had a goldsmith work a little kennel for him, all jeweled and encrusted with gold and enamel inlaid. Wherever she went, she carried the little fairy dog with her in memory of her friend. And as she watched it in sadness and anguish, and regrets melted out of her heart. Now at first Isolde did not guess the marvel, but thought her consolation was because the gift was of Tristan. Till one day she found that it was fairy, and that it was the little bell that charmed her soul, and then she thought, What have I to do with comfort, since Tristan is sorrowing? Oh, Tristan could have kept it too, and have forgotten his sorrow. But with high courtesy he sent it to me to give his joy to me, and to take up his own pain again. My friend, while you suffer, so long will I suffer also. And so Isolde took that magic bell and shook it just a little, and then by the open window she threw it into the sea. Isolde of the White Hands. Now apart the lovers neither live nor die, for it was life and death together, and Tristan fled his sorrow through seas and islands and many lands. He fled his sorrow till by seas and islands, till at last he came back to his land of Lyonesse. And there Rohalt, the keeper of the faith, welcomed Tristan with happy tears and called him son. But he could not live in the peace of his own land, and he turned again and rode through his kingdoms and through baronies, seeking adventures. From the Lyonesse to the lowlands, from the lowlands to the Germanies, to the Germanies and into Spain. And many lords he served, and many deeds he did. But for 2 years no news came to him out of Cornwall, nor friend nor messenger. And then Tristan thought that Isolde had forgotten him. Now it happened one day that, riding with Cornwall alone, Tristan came into the land of Brittany. They rode through a wasted plain of ruined walls and empty hamlets and burnt fields everywhere, and the earth deserted of men, and Tristan thought, I am weary, and my deeds profit me nothing, but my lady is far off, and I shall never see her again. Or why for 2 years has she made no sign, or why has she sent no messenger to find me as I wandered? Dude, you're like wandering all over the place. You're here, you're there, you're everywhere. How's she supposed to find you? Oh, sorry, that wasn't an aside comment. Anyway, But in Tintagel, Mark honors her and she gives him joy, and that little fairy bell has done a thorough work on Isolde, for little she remembers or cares for the joys the morning of old. Little for me she cares as I wander in this desert place, and therefore I too will forget. On the third day at the hour of noon, Tristan and Gorvenal came near a hill where an old chantry stood, and close by a hermitage also. And Tristan asked what wasted land that was, and the hermit answered, Lord, it is Breton land which Duke Hod holds. Hold the door. No, not hold the door. Duke hold, but not hold the door. It's different. Anyway, once it was rich in pasture and ploughland, and Count Riol of Nantes has wasted it. For you must know that this Count Riol was the Duke's vassal. The Duke has a daughter, fair among all kings' daughters, and Count Riol would have taken her to wife, but her father refused her to a vassal, and Count Riol would have her carried away by force. Many men have died in that quarrel, and thus the burnt and wasted land hereabout. And Tristan asked, Can the Duke wage his war? And the hermit answered, Hardly, my lord. Yet his last keep of Carhaix holds out still, for the walls are strong, and strong as the heart of the Duke's son Caerherdon, a very good knight and bold, but the enemy surrounds them on every side and starves them. Very hardly do they hold their castle. And then Tristan asked, How far is this keep of Carhaix? Sir, said the hermit, it is but 2 miles further on this way. And then Tristan and Gorvenal lay down, for it was evening. In the morning, when they had slept, and when the hermit had chanted and had shared his black bread with them, Tristan thanked him and rode hard to Carhaix. And as he halted beneath the fast high walls, he saw a little company of men behind the battlements, and he asked if Duke were there with his son Caerherdon. Now Hod was among them, and when he cried yes, Tristan called up to him and said, European and North American? No, he said, I am Tristan, king of Lyonesse, and Marke of Cornwall is my uncle. I have heard that your vassals do you wrong, and I have come to offer you my arms. Alas, Lord Tristan, go your way alone, and God reward you, for here within we have no more food, nor wheat, nor meat, nor any stores, but only lentils and little oats remaining. But Tristan said, For 2 years I dwelt in a forest, eating nothing save roots and herbs, yet I found it a good life. So open you the door. And so they opened the door and welcomed Tristan with honor, and Caerherdon showed him the wall and the dungeon keep with all their devices, and from the battlements he showed them plain where far away gleamed the tents of Duke Riol. And when they were down in the castle again, he said to Tristan, Friend, let us go to the hall where my mother and sister sit. And so together they came into the women's rooms, where mother and daughter sat together, weaving gold upon English cloth and singing a weaving song. They sang of Donnchadth the fair, who sits alone beneath the white thorn, and round about her blows the wind. She waits for Doon, her friend, but he tarries long and does not come. This was the song they sang. And Tristan bowed to them, and they to him. And then Caerherdon, showing the work his mother did, said, See, friend Tristan, what a workwoman is here, and how marvellously she adorns stoles and chasubles for the poor ministers. And see how my sister's hands run thread of gold upon this cloth. A right good sister are you called. Ah, Isolde of the white hands. Ah, my darling sister. But Tristan, hearing her name, smiled and looked at her more gently. And on the morrow, Tristan, Caerherdon, and 12 young knights left the castle and rode to a pine wood near the enemy's tents, and sprang from ambush, and captured a wagon of Count Riol's food, and from that day, by escapade and ruse, they would carry tents and convoys and kill off men, nor ever come back without some booty, so that Tristan and Caerherdon began to be brothers in arms, and kept faith and tenderness, as history tells. Yes, daily they made booty calls. And as they came back from these rides, talking chivalry together, often did Caerherdon praise his comrade Tristan, his sister Isolde of the white hands, for her simplicity and beauty. And one day, as the dawn broke, a sentinel ran from the tower through the halls, crying out, Lords, you've slept too long. Rise, rise, for an assault is on. And knights and burgesses armed and ran to the walls, and saw helmets shining on the plain, and pennants streaming crimson like flames, and all the host of Riol in its array. And then the Duke and Caerherdon deployed their horsemen before the gate, and from a bow length off they stooped and spurred and charged, and they put their lances down together, and arrows fell on them like April rain. Now Tristan had armed himself when the last of those sentinel had aroused, and he laced his shoes of steel, and he put on his mail, his spurs of gold, his hauberk, his helm over the gorget, and he mounted and spurred with shield on breast, crying, Carhaith! And as he came, he saw Duke Riol charging, rein free at Caerherdon, but Tristan came in between, so they met, Tristan and Duke Riol. And at the shock, Tristan's lance shivered, but Riol's lance struck Tristan's horse just where the breastpiece runs, and laid it on the field. But Tristan, standing, drew his sword and his burnished sword, and said, Coward! Here is death ready for any man that strikes the horse before the rider. But Riol answered, I think you have lied, my lord, and he charged him. And as he passed, Tristan let fall his sword so heavily upon his helm that he carried away the crest and the nasal. But the sword slipped on the mailed shoulder and glanced off the horse and killed it, and so that force of Duke Riol must slip the stirrup and leap and feel the ground. And then Riol too was on his feet, and they both fought hard in their broken mail, their scutcheons tore, their helmets loosened, and lashing with their dented swords, till Tristan struck Riol just where the helmet buckles, and it yielded, and the blow was struck so hard that the baron fell on hands and knees. When he had risen again, Tristan struck him down once more with a blow that split the helm and split the headpiece too and touched the skull. And then Riol cried mercy and begged his life, and Tristan took his sword. And so he promised to enter Duke Hall's keep and to swear homage again and to restore what he had wasted. And by his order the battle ceased, and his host went off discomfited. Now when the victors returned, Caerherdon said to his father, Sire, keep you Tristan, there is no better knight, and your land has need of such courage. So when the Duke had taken counsel with his barons, he said to Tristan, Friend, I owe you my land, but I shall be quit with you if you will take my daughter, Isolde of the White Hands, who comes of kings and of queens and of dukes before them in blood. And Tristan answered, I will take her, sire. So as the day was fixed, and Duke came with his friends, and Tristan with his, and before all, at the gate of the minster, Tristan wed Isolde of the White Hands, according to the church's law. Now, this is not his Isolde, right? But, yeah, okay, you got that. But that same night, as Tristan's valets undressed him, it happened that in drawing his arm from the sleeve, they drew off and let fall from his finger the ring of jasper, the ring of the other Isolde the fair, his Isolde. That ring sounded on the stones, and Tristan looked and saw it. Then his heart awoke, and he knew that he had done wrong when he saw that little ring of jasper sparkling in the dark. For he remembered the day when Isolde the fair had given him that ring. It was in the forest where, for his sake, she had led the hard life with him, and that night he saw again the hut in the wood of Morroy, and he was bitter with himself that ever he had accused her of treason, for now it was he that had betrayed, and he was bitter with himself also in pity for this new wife, for her simplicity and beauty, and see how these two Isoldes had met him in an evil hour, and to both had he broken faith. Now Isolde of the White Hands said to Tristan, hearing him sigh, Dear lord, have I hurt you in anything? Will you not speak me a single word? But Tristan answered, Friend, do not be angry with me. For once in another land I fought a foul dragon, and I was near to death, and I thought of the Mother of God, and I made a vow to her that should I ever wed, I would spend the first holy nights of my wedding in prayer and silence. Oh, why, said Isolde, that was a good vow. And Tristan watched through the night. The madness of Tristan. Now within her room at Tintagel, Isolde the fair sighed for the sake of Tristan, and named him her desire, of whom 2 years she had had no word whether he lived or no. Within her room at Tintagel, Isolde the fair sat singing a song she had made. She sang of Gurin taken and killed for his love, and how by guile the count had gave Gurin's heart to her to eat, and of her woe. The queen sang softly, catching the harp. Wait, what? He killed her and he gave her his heart to eat. Cool. The queen sang softly, catching the harp's tone. Her hands were cunning, her song good. She sang low down and softly. Then came in Cariado, a rich count from a far-off island that had fared to Tintagel to offer the queen in his service, and had spoken of love to her, though she disdained his folly. He found Isolde as she sang, and laughed to her. You know, you wrong a woman, that's the least you could expect is for her to rip your heart out and eat it. Good for her, saith I. But what do I know? I'm just a storyteller. Anyway, Corrido found Isolde as she was singing and laughed to her. Lady, how sad a song is that? As sad as the osprey's. Do they not say he sings for death? Your song means that to me. I die for you. Isolde said, So let it be, and may it mean so. For never come you here but to stir me in anger or mourning. Ever were you the screech owl or the osprey that boded ill when you spoke of Tristan. What news bear you now, Corrido? Corriado answered, You are angered. I know not why, but who heeds your words? Let the osprey bode me death. Here's the evil news the screech owl brings. Lady Isolde, Tristan, your friend, is lost to you. He has wed. Yes, taken a wife in a far-off land. So seek you otherwhere, for he mocks your love. He was wed in great pomp to Isolde of the White Hands, the king of Brittany's daughter. And Corriado went off in anger, but Isolde bowed her head and broke into tears. I would agree with you, J-Man, because often I find myself in Messenger's role and threaten with us. But in this case, I think we could go ahead and wipe out this messenger because he kind of stinks. Anyway, now far from Isolde, Tristan languished till one day he must needs see her again. And far from her death came surely, and he had rather die at once than day by day, and he desired some death, but that the queen might know it was in finding her. Then would death come easily. And so Tristan left Carhaith, secretly, telling no man, neither his kindred nor even Caherden, his brother in arms. He went in rags afoot, for no one marks a beggar on the high road, till he came to the shore of the sea. And there Tristan found in a haven a great ship ready. The sail was up, the anchor chain short at the bow. God save you, my lords, said he, and send you on a good journey. To what land sail you? To Tintagel, they said. And then Tristan cried out, Oh, my lords, Tintagel, take me with you thither. And so Tristan went aboard, and a fair wind filled the sail, and she ran 5 days and nights from Cornwall, till on the 6th day they dropped anchor in Tintagel haven. The castle stood above, fenced all around. There was but the one armed gate, and the 2 knights watched it night and day. So Tristan went ashore and sat upon the beach, and a man told him that Marke was there and had just held his court. But where, said Tristan, where is Isolde, the queen, and her fair maid Brangian? Why, in Tintagel too, I saw them lately. The queen's sad, as she always is. At the hearing of the name, Tristan suffered, and he thought that either by guile or courage could he see his friend, for Marke would surely kill him. And Tristan thought, Let him kill me, and let me die for her, since every day I die. But you, Isolde, even if you knew me here, would you not drive me out? And then he thought, I will try guile. I will seem mad, but with a madness that shall be great wisdom, and many shall think me a fool and have less wit than I. Just then a fisherman passed in a rough cloak and cape, and Tristan, seeing him, took him aside and said, Friend, will you not change clothes with me? And the fisherman found it a good bargain and replied in answer, Walker! Yes, friend, gladly. And he changed and ran off at once for fear of losing his gain. And then Tristan shaved his wonderful hair. He shaved it close to his head, and he left a cross all bald. And he rubbed his face in magic herbs and distilled in his own country, and it changed in color and skin so that none could know him. And he made him a club from a young tree torn from a hedgerow, and hung it to his neck, and went barefoot towards the castle. The porter made sure that he had to do with a fool, and said, Good morrow, fool. Where have you been this long while? And Tristan answered, Away at the abbot of St. Michael's wedding, and he wed an abbess large and veiled she was, and from the Alps to Mount St. Michael, how they came, the priests and the abbots and the monks and the regulars. They were all dancing on the green with croziers and staves under the high tree shade. Oh, but I left them all to come hither, for I serve at the king's board today. Then the porter said, Come in, Lord Fool. The Harry Ergin's son I know, and like your father. When he was within the courts, the serving men ran after him and cried out, The fool! The fool! But he made play with them, and they cast stones and struck him as they laughed. And in the midst of laughter and their cries, as the rout followed him, he came to that hall where, at the queen's side, King Mark sat under his canopy. And as he neared the door with his club at his neck, the king said, "Here's a merry fellow, let him in." And they brought him in, his club at his neck, and the king said, "Friend fool, welcome, what seek you here?" "Isolde, I seek whom I love so well. I bring my sister with me, Brunhilde the beautiful. Come, take her. You're weary of the queen, king. Take you my sister, Brunhilde. Give me the queen, Isolde, and I will hold her and serve you for her love." The king said, laughing, "Fool, if I gave you the queen, where would you take her, pray?" "Oh, very high between the clouds and the heavens, into a fair chamber glazed. The beams of the sun shine through it, yet the winds do not trouble it at all. There would I bear the queen into that crystal chamber of mine, of all compact of roses in the morning." And the kings and his barons laughed and said, "Here's a good fool at no loss for words." But the fool, as he sat there at the feet, gazed his soul most fixedly. "Friend fool," said King Mark, "what warrant have you the queen would heed so foul a fool as you?" "Oh, sire! Oh, many deeds have I done for her, and my madness is from her alone." "What's your name?" they said, and laughed. "Tristan," said he, "that loved the queen so well, and still till death will love her." But at the name the queen angered and weakened together, and said, "Get hence for an evil fool." But the fool, marking her anger, went on, "Queen Isolde, do you mind the day when, poisoned by the Morholt's spear, I took my harp to sea, and I fell upon your shore? Your mother healed me with strange drugs, do you recall? Have you no memory, queen?" But Isolde answered, "Out, fool, out! Your folly, you have passed the bounds." But the fool, still playing, pushed the barons out, crying, "Out, madman, out, out, out! Leave me to counsel with Isolde, since I have come here for the love of her." As the king laughed, Isolde blushed and said, "King, drive me forth this fool." But the fool still laughed and cried, "Oh, queen, do you mind you of the dragon I slew in your land? I hid its tongue in my shirt and burnt of its venom when I fell by the roadside. Oh, what a knight was I then! It was you that succored me." Isolde replied, "Silence! You wrong all knighthood by your words, for you are a fool from birth. Cursed be the seamen that brought you hither. Rather they should have cast you into the sea." "Queen Isolde," the fool went on, "do you mind of your haste when you would have slain me with my own sword of the hair of gold, and how I stood up with the seneschal?" "Silence," said Isolde, "you drunkard." "Bye-bye, Dagmar. I will miss you ever." "Silence," said Isolde, "you drunkard. You were drunk last night, and so you dreamed these dreams." And so we enter into the overtime part of the story. "Drunk I am, and still so I am," said Tristan the fool, "but of such a draught that never can influence fade. Queen Isolde, do you mind you of that hot and open day upon the high seas? We thirsted, we drank together from the same cup, and since that day I have been drunk with an awful wine." When the queen heard these words, which she alone could understand, she rose and would have gone. But the king held her by her ermine cloak, and she sat down again. As the king had his fill of the food, he called for his falcons and went to hunt. And Isolde said to him, "Sire, I am weak and sad. Let me go rest in my rooms. I am tired of these follies." And so Isolde went to her room in thought, and sat upon her bed and mourned, calling herself a slave, and saying, "Why was I born? Brangien, dear sister, life is so hard to me that death were better. There's a fool without, shaving crisscross, and come in an evil hour, and he is a warlock, for he knows in every part myself my whole life. He knows what you and I and Tristan only know." Then Brangien said, "Why, Isolde, it may be Tristan." "No," said the queen, "for he was the first of knights. If this fool is foul and made awry, curse me this hour in the ship that brought him hither." "My lady," said Brangien, "soothe you. You curse over much these days. Maybe he comes from Tristan? Oh, I cannot tell, I know him not. But go find him, friend Brangien, and see if you know him." And so Brangien went to the hall where the fool still sat alone. Tristan knew her and let fall his club and said, Brangien, dear Brangien, before God have pity upon me. Foul fool, what devil taught you my name? Lady, he said, I have known it long, by my head that once was fair. If I am mad, the blame is yours to watch over the wine we drank upon the high seas. The cup was of silver, I held it to Isolde, and she drank. Do you remember, Lady Brangien? No, Brangien cried. She trembled and left, and he called out, Brangien, pity me! Tristan, in fool's guise still, followed and saw Isolde. He stretched out his arms, but in her shame, sweating agony, she drew back, and Tristan, angered, said, I have lived too long, for I have seen the day that Isolde will nothing of me. Isolde, how hard love dies. Isolde, a welling water that floods and runs large is a mighty thing. On that day it fails as nothing, so love that turns. But Tristan said, Brother, I look at you in doubt and tremble. I know you not for Tristan. Queen Isolde, friend, I am Tristan, indeed, that do love you. Mind you for the last time of the dwarf, and of the flower, and of the blood I shed in my leap. Oh, and of that ring I took in kisses and in tears on the day we parted. I have kept that jasper ring and asked it counsel. And then at last Isolde knew Tristan for what he was, and said, Heart, oh, you would have broken of sorrow not to have known the man who has suffered so much for you. Pardon my master and my friend. And her eyes darkened, and she fell. But when the light returned, she was held by him who kissed her eyes and her face, and so passed they 3 full days. But on the third, 2 maids that watched them told the traitor Andre, and he put spies well armed before the women's rooms. And when Tristan would enter, they cried out, Back, fool! But he brandished his club, laughing, What? May I not kiss the queen who loves me and awaits me now? And they feared him for a mad fool, and he passed in through the door. Then, being with the queen for the last time, he held her in his arms and said, Friend, I must fly, for they are wondering. I must fly, and perhaps shall never see you more. My death is near, and far from you my death will come of desire. Oh, friend, said Isolde, fold your arms around me close and strain me so that our hearts may break and our souls go free at last. Take me to that happy place of which you told me long ago, the fields whence none return, where great singers sing their songs forever. Take me now. I will take you to the happy palace of the living queen. The time is near. We have drunk all joy and sorrow. The time is near. When it is finished, if I call you, you will come, my friend. You will come if I call you. Friend, call me, you know that I shall come. Friend, God send you his reward. As he went out, the spies would have held him, but he laughed aloud and flourished his club and cried, Peace, gentlemen! I go and will not stay. My lady sends me to prepare that shining house I vowed for her, a cave of crystal and a rose shot through with morning. I'm off! Ta-ta! And as they cursed and drave him, the fool went leaping on his way. The death of Tristan. When he was come back to Brittany, to Carhaith, it happened that Tristan, riding to the aid of Caerden, his brother-in-arms, fell into ambush and was wounded by a poisoned spear. And many doctors came, but none could cure him of the ill. And Tristan weakened and paled, and his bones showed. And then he knew that his life was going, that he must die. And he had a desire to see once more Isolde the Fair. But he could not seek her, for the sea would have killed him in his weakness. And how could Isolde come to him? And sad, and suffering the poison, he waited death. He called Caerden secretly to tell him his pain, for they loved each other with a loyal love, and he would have no one in the room save Caerden, his brother, nor even in the neighboring rooms. Isolde of the White Hands began to wonder. She was afraid and wished to hear. She came back and listened by the wall at Tristan's bed, and she listened. As she listened, one of her maids kept watch for her. And now Tristan within. Tristan had gathered up his strength, had half risen, leaning against the wall, and Caerden, his brother-in-arms, wept beside him. They wept their good comradeship, broken so soon, and their friendship. And then Tristan told Caerden of his love for that other Isolde, Isolde the Fair, and of the sorrow of his life thus far. Fair friend and gentle, said Tristan, I am in a foreign land where I have neither friend nor cousin save you. and you alone in this place have given me comfort. My life is going. I wish to see once more Isolde the Fair, my true love. Ah, did I but know of a messenger who would go to her. For now I know that she will come to me. Caherden, my brother in arms, I beg it of your friendship. Try this thing for me, and if you carry my word, I will become your liege and will cherish you beyond all other men. And as Caherden saw Tristan broken down, his heart reproached him and said, Fair comrade, do not weep. I will do what you desire. Even if it were risk of death, I would do it for you. No distress nor anguish will let me from doing it according to my power. Give me the word you send, I will make ready. And Tristan answered, Thank you, my friend Caherden. This is my prayer. Take this ring. It is a sign between me and her. And when you come to her land, pass yourself at court for merchant. Show her silk and stuffs, but make so that she sees the ring, for then she will find some ruse by which to speak to you in secret. Then tell her that my heart salutes her. Tell her that she alone can bring me comfort. Tell her that if she does not come, I shall die. Tell her to remember our past time, our great sorrows, all the joy there was in our loyal and tender love. And tell her to remember the draught we drank together on the high seas, where we drank our death together that day. Tell her to remember the oath I swore to serve a single love, for I have kept that oath. Behind the wall, the Isolde of the White Hands heard all these things, and Tristan continued. Hasten, my friend, and come back quickly. You will not see me again. Take 40 days for your turn, but come back with Isolde the Fair. Tell your sisters nothing, or tell her that you seek some doctor. Take my fine ship, 2 sails with you. Yes, take 2 sails with you. 1 white sail and 1 black sail. And as you return, if you bring Isolde with you, friend, hoist the white sail, but if you bring her not, hoist the black sail. Now I have nothing more to say, but God guide you and bring you back safe. With the first fair wind, Caherden took the open, weighed anchor and hoisted sail, and ran with a light air and broke the seas. They bore rich merchandise with them, dyed silks of rare colours, enamel of Touraine, wines of Poitou, and by this ruse Caherden thought to reach Isolde. 8 days and nights they ran full sail to Cornwall. Now, little need I tell these. A woman's wrath is a fearful thing, and all men fear it, and rightly so. For according to her love, so will her vengeance be, and by their love and their hate come quickly. But their hate lives longer than their love, and they will make play with love, but not with hate. And so Isolde of the White Hands, who had heard every word Tristan said, and who had so loved Tristan, waited her vengeance upon what she loved most in the world. But she hid it all. And when the doors were open again, she came to Tristan's bed. She served him with food as a lover should. And she spoke him gently, and kissed him lightly, and asked him if Caherden would soon return with one to cure him. But all day long she thought upon her vengeance. And Caherden sailed and sailed till he dropped the anchor in the haven of Tintagel. He landed and took with him cloth of rare dye and a cup well chiseled and worked, and made a present to them of them to King Marke, and courteously begged of him his peace and safeguard that he might traffic in his land. And the king gave him his peace before all the men of his palace. Then Caherden offered the queen a buckle of fine gold, and said, Queen, the gold is good. Then taking from his finger Tristan's ring, he put it side by side with the jewel, and said, See you, O queen, the gold of this buckle is the finer gold. Yet, he said slyly, this ring also has its worth, I'm told. Now when Isolde saw that ring, and what it was, her heart trembled, and her colour changed, and fearing what might next be said, she drew Caherden apart near a window, as if to see and bargain the better, and Caherden said to her low down, Lady, Tristan is wounded of a poisoned spear and is about to die. He sends you word that you alone can bring him comfort, and recalls to you the great sorrows that you bore together. Keep you the ring, for it is yours. But Isolde answered, weakening, Friend, I will follow you. Get ready your ship tomorrow at dawn. And on the morrow at dawn they raised anchor, stepped mast, hoisted sail, and happily the boat left land. But at Carhaix, Tristan lay and longed for Isolde's coming. Nothing now filled him any more, and if he lived it was only as a waiting for her. Day by day Tristan sent watchers to the shore to see if some ship came, and learn the colour of her sail if it did. and there was no other thing left in his heart. He had himself carried to the cliff of the Penmarks, where it overlooks the sea, and all the daylight long he gazed far off over the water. Hear now a tale most sadful and pitiful to all who love. Already was Isolde the fair near. Already the cliff of the Penmark showed far away, and his ship ran heartily, when a storm wind rose and on a sudden grew, and struck the sail, and the ship turned all round about, and the sailors bore away, and sore against their will they ran before the wind. The wind raged, and big seas ran, and the air grew thick with darkness, and the ocean itself turned dark, and the rain drove in gusts. The yards snapped, and the sheet they struck their sail, and they ran with wind and water. In an evil hour they had forgotten to haul their pinnace aboard. It leapt in their wake, and the great sea broke it away. Then Isolde the fair cried out, God wills that I do not live to see him, my love, once, even one more time. God wills my drowning in this sea. O Tristan, had I spoken to you but once again, it is little I should have cared for death that comes afterwards. But now, my love, I cannot come to you, for God so wills it, and that is the core of my grief. And thus the queen complained so long as the storm endured, but after 5 days it died down. And Caerherdin hoisted the sail, the white sail, right up to the very masthead with great joy. The white sail, so that Tristan might know its color from afar. And already Caerherdin saw Brittany far off like a cloud. Now hardly were these things seen and done when a calm came, and the sea lay even and untroubled. The sail bellied no longer. The sailors held ship now up and down, down, up, the tide beating backwards and forwards in vain. They saw the shore far off, but the storm had carried their boat away, and they could not land. On the third night, Isolde dreamt of this dream, that she held in her lap a boar's head which had befouled her skirts with blood, and then she knew that she would never see her lover alive again. And Tristan was now too weak to keep his watch from the cliff of the Penmarks. For many long days within the walls, far from the shore, he had mourned for Isolde because she did not come. Dolorous and alone, he mourned and sighed in restlessness. He was near death from desire. But at last the wind freshened, and the white sail showed. Then it was that Isolde of the white hands took her vengeance. She came to where Tristan lay, and she said, Friend, Caerherdin, my brother, is here. I have seen his ship upon the sea. She comes up hardly, yet I know her. May he bring that which will heal thee, friend. And Tristan trembled and said, Beautiful friend, Isolde of white hands, are you sure the ship is his indeed? Then tell me what is the color of the sail. Oh, I saw it plain and well. They've shaken it out and hoisted it very high, friend, for they have little wind. For its color, why, it is black. And Tristan turned him to the wall and said, I cannot keep this life of mine any longer. I cannot. And he said 3 times, Isolde, my friend. Isolde, my friend. Isolde, my friend. And saying it the 4th time, Tristan died. And then throughout the house the knights and the comrades of Tristan wept out loud, and they took him from his bed and laid him on a rich cloth, and they covered his body with a shroud. But at sea the wind had risen, and struck the sail fair and full, and drove the ship to shore, and Isolde the fair set foot upon the land. She heard loud mourning in the streets, and the tolling of bells in minsters and the chapels' towers, and she asked the people the meaning of the knell and of their tears. And an old man said to her, Lady, we suffer a great grief. Tristan, that was so loyal and so right. Oh, Tristan is dead. He was open to the poor. He ministered to the suffering. It is this chief evil that has ever fallen upon the land. But Isolde, hearing them, could not answer them a word. She went up to the palace, following the way, and her cloak was random and wild. The Bretons marveled as she went, nor had they ever seen a woman of such beauty, and they said, Who is she? Whence does she come? Now near Tristan, Isolde of the white hands crouched and maddened at the evil she had done, and calling and lamenting over the dead man. The other Isolde came in and said to her, Lady, arise, and let me come by him. I have more right to mourn him than have you. Believe me, I loved him more. When she had turned to the east and prayed God, she moved the body a little and lay down by the dead man beside her friend. She kissed his mouth and his face and clasped him closely, and so gave up her own soul and died beside him of grief for her lover. When King Mark heard of the death of these two lovers, he crossed the sea and came into Brittany, and he had two coffins hewn for Tristan and Isolde, one of Chalcedony for Isolde, one of beryl for Tristan. And he took their beloved bodies away with him upon his ship to Tintagel, and by a chantry to the left and right of the apes he had their tombs built round. But in one night there sprang from the tomb of Tristan a green and leafy briar, strong in its branches and the scent of its flowers. It climbed the chantry, and it fell to root again by Isolde's tomb. Thrice did the peasants cut it down, but thrice it grew again and flowered as strong. They told the marvel to King Mark, and he forbade them to cut the briar any more. Now the good singers of old time, Beroul and Thomas of Built, Gilbert and Gottfried, told this tale for lovers and none other, and by my pen they beg you for your prayers. They greet those who are cast down and those in heart, those troubled and those filled with desire. May all herein find strength against inconstancy and despite and loss and pain and all the bitterness of loving.